For this video, we're going to be talking about Ruslan. If you don't know who Ruslan is, he's a digital creator. He's a YouTuber in the Christian space. Mostly does current event stuff, kind of like John McCrae. What do you mean? But he's his own unique brand. And full disclosure, I actually like Ruslan quite a bit. But I wanted to get into this video and give my 2 cents. The actual YouTube video is called Ruslan Exposed, and he's going to be talking about um, a sort of controversy. Let's get into this.
All right, guys, I am overdue to adding a video to this Ruslan Exposed playlist, which I've been updating for years, as you can see here. And quite frankly, we need to clear up a bit of confusion about how we do things here, the Bless God Summit, and some backlash that we've seen from certain pockets of the internet. I'll be talking about all these things transparently. And if you feel like this video is insufficient and you're genuinely concerned, check out Aaron's page in the community tab over there. You could drop additional questions that you want me to get into. I'll be on his channel Wednesday and he can ask me whatever he wants. So for the record, I've always been transparent about all of this, but I think as a platform grows and new people come around, there's going to be certain people that just don't like you, and there's going to be certain people that are genuinely confused. And so this is for the people that are genuinely confused. If you don't like what we do, this isn't for you. If you think that a Christian who is a public person can never do anything to monetize their audience, to make a living for themselves, to build a team, to build products and services that is openly connected to their Christian faith, this isn't the video for you. If you hold to what many would say is like the Dorian principle around...
Okay, so here's the real question, right? Can someone who's doing a ministry or doing something for God monetize? Is that an okay thing to do? And I'll let him keep going here.
Ministry, I respect it. I get it. But this video is probably not going to be for you, and I'll explain why later. So in this video, we'll address the old clips that have resurfaced. We'll address why I haven't responded to it. I'll talk about that at the very, very, very end, so stay till the end of this video. We'll address the concerns about the Bless God Summit. Why is there a $75 meet and greet upgrade? Why are there children's tickets? How do we do an event? The real behind the scenes of the finances of an event like this, and the merch bundles, the perceived $65 t-shirts, and what that's really all about. Okay, so be sure to watch till the end of this video if you actually care, if you're genuinely concerned. And again, if your mind is made up, this video is not for you, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree on these things. Okay, so if you're new here and perhaps you saw the video, you're confused about some of these old clips, and they are kind of jarring when they're put together in an edit like this, let me provide you guys with a little bit of context. So there was a collage of videos released of me saying some fairly jarring things when it comes to finances, when it comes to monetization, when it comes to living in Southern California, when it comes to several different topics. And I could understand how those things can come off jarring if you're now discovering this channel and the Bless God Studios channel. I totally get it. And let me just say, all of us grow, all of us become more wise, we get more access to more mentors, and it's fair to say that the way I spoke about things back then, I probably wouldn't speak about things like that today. As a matter of fact, we have a third channel called Bless God Business, where you can go and see a deeper explanation around the scriptural philosophy about all this sort of stuff. But for context, I am a Dave Ramsey paradigm type of guy when it comes to finances. I believe that we should be debt free. I believe that we should live on a budget. I believe that we should be radically generous. And all of that I pull primarily from Proverbs. So to be clear, I wouldn't say those things today in the same way that I did 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when most of those clips surfaced. The reason why is because I understand that finances is a delicate topic for many people. And because finances is a sensitive topic, I've learned to not be hyperbolic and entertaining.
Yeah, so just to interject here, I'm not going to be talking about finances and how to handle that. I'm probably pretty close to a Dave Ramsey type myself, but I do have a mortgage, so is that a full Dave Ramsey kind of view? I'm not really sure anymore. And it seems like Dave has kind of shifted somewhat or softened on some of those kind of issues. But anyway, let's keep going.
when talking about these things on a live stream. Let me address the clips more directly. First and foremost, I think people don't know that when I came on YouTube, the objective was not to be a public Christian. I come from music. And even when I was doing music, a lot of the pushback that we would get is that we were rappers who were Christians instead of Christian rappers. And as I grew, I found out that it's probably best for me to be more transparent about my faith. And so the reason why I got on YouTube was because from 2015 to 2021, my primary source of income was being a full-time musician. Some of you guys don't know I make music. Totally fine. You guys could check it out. It's on Spotify. I think it's rather good. And it is what provided for me and my family in Southern California from 2015 to 2021. Prior to that, I actually worked at a church, the Movement Church in San Marcos. So pulling off being a full-time artist in Southern California to provide for my family was a pretty big feat. We were grossing six figures before we paid anybody, before we paid contractors, before we covered expenses to run the business. And so what happened was my audience started asking me how I was doing this. Fellow aspiring rapper.
Just to interject again, Ruslan actually, it's pretty amazing to make it in the music industry. I can't tell you how many people I know who would love that kind of opportunity and probably couldn't diversify or walk away from it if they really got the opportunity. So glad to see he kind of felt a calling to do something else. But obviously he still enjoys his music and still does his music. And I haven't listened to any of it, full disclosure. But I probably should. I probably should be a good internet denizen and listen to his music. Anyway.
And people who were trying to get into music started asking me for advice. And the channel here has always been driven by what my audience at the time is asking me to engage with. So at the time, my audience was primarily Christian rappers and Christian creatives and musicians, those sorts of folks who weren't really consumed or concerned with trying to build a ministry online as much as trying to figure out how to earn a living off of the things that they're creating. This is what I would call my Christian Gary Vee era. And we'll post some videos over here about the type of topics I was covering. This era then evolved into doing weekly music reviews of other artists and giving them feedback, and also giving them practical advice on how to learn to monetize what they're doing. Now, again, if you don't think a public Christian should ever monetize what they're doing, that's totally fine. Let me put it to you this way. Think of the relationship between a creator and an audience as consensual, meaning that people choose to follow creators. And generally speaking, I think most people don't have a problem with supporting the creators that are putting out stuff they value. So if you're a smaller creator and people know that this is taking a lot of work, this is you sacrificing time from your family, and they can rally together and give $5 a month, and there's 1,000 of them, that can allow the average person who's trying to do music or trying to do YouTube to make a living and potentially transition from their day job. And so to me, the critique of monetizing your audience is not on the back of preaching the gospel and monetizing that. We'll have more on that later. The practical side is that an audience is opting in to watch a creator, and generally speaking, they're already supporting and open to other ways they can support a creator. So if somebody has 70,000 subscribers, 50,000 subscribers, and they can pull together 100 people or 500 people or 1,000 people to support a product or service, something they provide, that honestly allows that person to make more stuff that the audience who already consented to being there is excited for. And what I saw is that oftentimes Christian creators, people who are rappers, people who are trying to start podcasts, would drive their families and their personal lives in the grounds, sometimes basked under the guise of ministry, when really they were trying to run for-profit businesses around their passion and around their faith. You would be shocked how many Christian rappers, pastors even, have completely ran their families into the ground that I've personally met. How many marriages have been destroyed? How many divorces have been filed? Because of a lack of wisdom and planning around these things have completely shipwrecked, not just their lives, but sometimes their faith. And you may be thinking, well, Ruslan, that doesn't apply to me. Fair enough. You're not a Christian rapper who probably comes from some form of poverty, has some unresolved issues in their personal life, and is married, leading a family. I was speaking to a very specific niche of aspiring rappers trying to figure out how to earn a living off their art before they either have to quit doing the thing that they love or they end up bringing harm to their personal lives. So I say all that to say that context matters. Who was I speaking to? Aspiring Christian rappers. I wasn't speaking about using the gospel to build an audience. I was speaking about people who were driven by the gospel to share their faith in multiple mediums. Some of them rappers, some of them podcasters, some of them aspiring YouTubers. The second thing is, when I open with a how do I monetize my audience, I'm actually talking about a hypothetical situation. If you go back, I say 200,000, 500,000 on TikTok. Friends, I'm at 75,000 people on TikTok till this day. I've been shadow banned on TikTok for a long time. So I'm actually not even talking about myself. I'm talking about the person who has an audience on the internet. People like what they do. They've said, yes, we enjoy this thing that you're creating. And how can that person start to monetize what they're doing so that they can provide for their family? Why was I doing this? Because I saw so many of the issues they were dealing with. And from my vantage point of someone that had been an independent Christian artist for 5 years, I wanted to speak into that, and I wanted to provide some wisdom and insight. And when was I doing this? This is between the years of 2018 and I'd say into maybe early 2021. So 4 or 5 years ago, as you can see, I have longer hair. I'm wearing a beanie. I'm in a totally different studio. Not what I'm doing currently. The reason why I stopped making this content is because, again, my audience started to ask me for more of my insight around faith and less around business and marketing. And that is, ironically enough, when the channel really exploded. I discovered that the thing I had done most behind the scenes, which was serving in my local church for decades, leading Bible studies, leading small groups, helping people contextualize what was going on in society and connecting it to scripture, that oddly enough, that was the thing that people really wanted from me. So I say all that to say, as my audience...
Okay, so what has he done? He's gone about it the right way, hasn't he? He was doing Christianity in an appropriate setting, in an appropriate way, and then he had this separate thing that he was doing online, and it really didn't occur to him until that audience was asking him questions about faith that he was at least open about, and took the opportunity for this other thing he was doing to mention it and talk about it, and got more questions, and now has shifted. It's kind of interesting.
Grown and the channel's evolved, I've learned to be more delicate with how I talk about these things. Being live, engaging with a live chat, talking about things that are sensitive, being hyperbolic, probably not the wisest way to talk about this topic. But here's another clip from that same era when I was live also, but notice that the tone is different, and how I talked about finances then is almost the same as how I talk about finances now. Is because my wife is the most valuable in my house, not me. Money is just a tool to create the type of environment where we can focus on our son, where we can focus on our health, where we could focus on saving, where we could focus on giving, where we could focus on helping. My wife is the one who creates that environment, creates that atmosphere, and she's the most valuable. And so you guys, some of you guys are feeling conflicted to make more money, but the reality is if you made more money, you would not only add more value, not only would you be a better steward of your money, you could actually create the type of life where you could be optimally a blessing to your future kids, to your spouse, to your neighbors, to your church, right? That is just a fact. And let me also say this. I think there is a chasm of a difference between monetizing the gospel, which is free and available to everyone. You can walk into almost any church and get a Bible, and a Christian who is providing some sort of product, podcast, service, and monetizing that. Those are not the same thing. Those should not be conflated. So let me give you some examples. The Christian company that is publishing books around theology, the Christian company that is publishing books about Christian lifestyle is not the same thing as the monetization of the gospel. Those people run businesses. Those businesses have employees. Those employees need to be paid. Those vendors need to be paid. Those things require a strategy. The gospel should be freely given, and it is. This channel exists to contextualize scripture in the context of our modern day society and the craziness that we're living in. And it's my opinion that if you are a public person that is a Christian, you're probably going to be passionate about your faith. Whether you are making Christian films and TV series, whether you are making Christian music, you're probably going to be passionate about your faith and want to share it. And that is a good thing. We need more people talking about their faith in the world. But then to conflate that person is monetizing off of the gospel, I think is just a categorical error. I don't think it's the same thing. And you could disagree with that, and we could agree to disagree on that. But to say that the person who's doing a podcast is monetizing the gospel, to say the person that is putting out music is monetizing the gospel, or to say the person that is making a series about the life of Jesus and the disciples is monetizing the gospel, I think it is a categorical error. All Christian media is a supplement to your personal walk with Jesus and your devotion. It is not the sustenance. Let me give you an example. I had a friend once upon a time. He worked at a nutrition and supplement shop. And this friend of mine was broke. And because he was broke, he thought it'd be wise to try and live off of supplements for a week. All he drank was protein shakes. Okay, now protein shakes are great in their proper and intended use. But what happened to him is he ended up having to get his stomach pumped because he overconsumed protein shakes. And the way I would look at all of this is that this is not intended to.
Yeah, so as I said, he's gone about it the right way. He didn't say, okay, here's this audience of Christians, and I'm going to fleece them of some money by saying things that they like to hear. He actually said, hey, here's music that I like to make. Let me share that with an audience, and then eventually attract other artists and so on. And because apparently his music was good, he attracted people who liked the music, but didn't know much about the faith part. And so I kept asking him about the faith part. And he started sharing that, and that took off, and here he is now. I have to say that sounds like a better path than, say, other personalities that have what we used to call televangelists, but they operate on the internet now. But anyway, let's continue here.
To sustain you. The scriptures are intended to sustain you. You getting into a local church is intended to sustain you. You getting discipled by real people is intended to sustain you. That is your meat and potatoes. This is not, friends. This is just a supplement. This is hopefully around to encourage you, inspire you, empower you to do the other things we just talked about, which is your sustenance. There's also a part that talks about opportunity cost and what I charge to leave and all those sorts of things. And I think, listen, all of us have to count the cost on what it requires us to be away from our families. Now, what I'm talking about primarily there is if I'm going to do a show or if I'm going to travel somewhere. I do stuff for free all the time today. Speak at young adults groups, I do local ministry, I plug in today. But when we're talking about counting the cost to travel somewhere, when we're talking about counting the cost to take away time from the things that you're responsible for, I think all of us have to take a inventory of what am I good at and what am I not good at. Friends, this is why most of you don't change your own oil. Many of you go to Jiffy Lube.
Okay, I hate to interrupt the point he was about to make, but I will say for myself, I have found that since I started this YouTube channel, I've spent an inordinate amount of time that I didn't realize went into the production of YouTube videos. And so I've deepened my respect for YouTube creators.
Jiffy Lube provides a service. It buys you back some of your time. This is a concept that sounds crazy and controversial when clipped up, but when you actually examine it, every single one of us counts the opportunity cost of what it requires to do certain things or outsource certain things. And by the way, again, we did a whole playlist on this on our Bless God Business channel, the idea of ridiculous margins. There's a whole video about that. I can't get into all of it, but it's quite simply the exchange of if you're going to do something by hand, like I was, heat pressing all of our shirts versus outsourcing something. The more you do something by hand, the better your margins are, but the harder it is and the more physically laboring it is in terms of time consuming. So gentleman just came over, he fixed some doors in my covered patio. He made 100% profit on that because he just used his time and his labor. But if he was running a handyman business, there would be someone else that comes and does the actual job while he works on getting the actual leads, decreasing his margins. So there's been some speculation about what does Bless God Studios generate. And let me just tell you, all of it is wrong. Like every single number points it out. We don't have 7,000 paid Patreon. We have less than 2,000. Our AdSense are not as they were projected. And there could be speculation about what it is that we generate. But the issue is that if we don't generate money, what that really means is that some of my team members who work here full time, have health insurance, and have other benefits, won't have jobs. And one of the things that I take a lot of joy in is
the variability of online advertising is kind of insane. I've noticed this on different platforms and different niches and so on. It's crazy how different some of those can be, and how different those can be from week to week. Say,
being a Christian business owner who is able to pay his employees a fair, reasonable salary in Southern California, which is one of the most expensive places to live. Now, I know some of you guys think, well, just move to Texas. Well, that's easy for you to say when you're already in Texas. If you have roots here, if you have a church family here, if your community's here, your kids' school is here, you can't just up and move somewhere else in the country. Oftentimes, many of us are called to stay and hopefully impact the areas we're already at. But let me give you 2 verses to give you a little bit of perspective. Now, this is actually directly in the context of people earning a living off ministry. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 9. The Apostle Paul is saying, hey, I could charge these people, but I don't, because I don't want to be a stumbling block. Read this whole chapter for yourself. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 11, it says, if we have sown spiritual seed among you, is it too much if we reap a material harvest from you? If others have this right of support, shouldn't we have it all the more? Okay, so this is talking about sowing a spiritual seed and reaping a material harvest. Now check out this verse. In the same passage where it says that anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than a non-believer, the standard in this passage, so that people aren't too dependent on the church taking care of other people, is that we are all called to provide for the needs of our extended family and our household. But check out what Paul says in verse 17 around specifically ministry. The elders who direct the affairs of the church well are worthy of double honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. For Scripture says, do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain, and the worker deserves his wages. That is talking about pastors who minister and share the gospel. Mike Winger did a whole video about this, landing at a conclusion where though pastors shouldn't be consumed with the amount of money they make, and they should be, according to what the scriptures say, compensated well. Now, you can watch Mike Winger's video here if you don't believe me. Now, this might come as a shock to you guys, but if pastors are to be compensated well, we are not pastors. We are not a church. We are not a nonprofit. This has always been very transparent. We make Christian media to help you supplement your Christian journey. We also provide products and services. Our products are our prayer journals, which, by the way, are available for free at blessgodpdf.shop, meaning you can get the PDF version completely for free. We also have devotionals. We have t-shirts and hoodies that you could put on so that you could remind yourself.
Okay, I'm going to stop him right there, and he has a couple more minutes, I think, of his own video, but you get the idea, right? He's saying, hey, I'm getting criticized for doing the Bless God Summit and all of this stuff, and even being criticized for making money off of YouTube or whatever, because the problem is people have set him up as Ruslan is not your pastor. Ruslan is not a spiritual guide. He's a tiny light, great distance away from you, and he's pointing you in kind of a direction, but he's not guiding you the way a spiritual leader would. And I think that's exactly the best and most charitable way to look at all online Christian creators. Is we're not spiritual guides. I think that's asking too much of us. We're just pointing you in a direction and giving you that multitude of inputs to help you to figure things out. And it's always kind of weird to me, honestly, when people say, oh, this person shouldn't be making money from doing this thing if he's doing it for God or whatever. What exactly are you supposed to not do as if it's for God? Right? I mean, the Bible says do everything as unto the Lord. So what sort of person are you internally if you think that something shouldn't make money as unto the Lord, but or shouldn't make money if it's for God, but you're going to work every day and making money? Are you not doing that for God? Are you splitting your life apart and saying, well, this I'm doing for me, but this other stuff that I do for God, I'm gonna not be paid for that. God's gonna be my hobby. I'm gonna live the quote unquote real life and I don't know, be godless or whatever, and then I'm gonna compartmentalize and uh, the sovereign God of the universe will be uh, pursued in my hobby time. Um, and that's sort of my take on it. Is it makes very little sense to say, um, you know, uh, that a Christian shouldn't be thinking about money or how to make money, even from a form of ministry, if you want to call it that. Um, it, and I guess it is sort of a form of ministry, but I mean, even ministries are paid. Um, so is the thought that a Christian YouTuber should um, find sponsoring churches to do quote unquote Christian ministry online? It's kind of strange. Um, but anyway, so these are my takes on it. I don't think Ruslan's done anything wrong. I do think he's right about there's this point at which you would be taking advantage of God to say, if you're pursuing it to squeeze people out of their dollars, and you see that in like I said, televangelists and so on. They treat people like sponges that they can just squeeze out the juice and uh, discard. Essentially, they're not actually spiritually feeding anybody. Uh, uh, at least not with the kind of fruit that people need to have. And I don't see that from Ruslan. I think he's a genuine person. Um, obviously, the picture on your screen is quite funny. But anyway, that's all I had to say, and I appreciate you listening to me and listening to Ruslan and hearing out what he had to say and in defense of some of the criticism he's had for the Blessed God Summit and so on. But have a great week, everybody.